Welcome everybody to this is day 2 of the Summer Game Development Jam, and we have a special conversation today with Tom Austin and Jack Sides talking about like the things that you can do with a prototype that you've built in a game jam like this, and specifically this is like anticipating the animation illustration BFA. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Tom Austin, who is
BFA modeling.
BFA modeling.
Yeah.
Yes.
Instructor. And I also supervise thesis projects. I really wanted to talk about why I think this is such a great idea for people developing games in the BFA project. If you're doing your thesis, in the past we did several games and the art, the story was great. The modeling looked good, but the gameplay suffered because it was done by people who like games, but they weren't experts in how games work. We then came up with and then we started working with the Summer Game Dev Game Jam, or the Game Dev. We had a couple of workshops, and one of the ones that really stood out at the time was Tesca in the Shadows. It was a monster in a dungeon, kind of a crawling game. It was done by Amy Albus, Saura E. Gibrani, Cole Ferguson, and was the game designer, and that really made a big difference because he was able to see what worked in a game and what was fun. His specific job was to be the advocate for the player, to make sure that what was being developed, even if the art was great and the story was good, but the player had a good time. And then we ended up getting programmers who had done games before, not just programmers, but programmers who are used to Unity or Unreal. And Vince Chianakos came in and did the programming for that. And the game came out really good. And it got up on itch. I don't know if it's still up there, it can still be downloaded, but it was a good game. And then we continued to do games. We started realizing how important it was when we had game designers helping develop the games. And one of the best ones that came out of that was Planturi. That was done by Emily Leahy, Elaine Lee, Abby Agawara. They were the directors, and a whole bunch of undergraduates worked on that. I don't know if anybody of you have worked on it when that came out. We had programmers from the university, Ryoko Kuriel, Cameron Harvey, and Darren Wynn. All participated and made that an outstanding game. And I think that's still up on itch, and you can take a look at it. A really beautiful game. But all I really wanted to talk about was the difference between when we didn't have game developing participation and then when we started having it. Having programmers who knew games, who had worked in the game club, worked in the as game developers, made a huge difference. And with that, I would like to turn this over to Jack. Jack's going to talk about some of the same stuff, but in a lot more detail. Thank you.
All right. My name is Jack Sides. I was a BFA game dev. We all good? Yeah. I was a BFA game dev or BFA animation director of a game 2 years ago. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how to go about developing a game with the Summer Games Jam, and then using that kind of pre-development to put together a pitch so that you can pitch your BFA game and actually have it be successful. So there are a couple of different main points that I want to hit on. But the first one is keep track of your files, because I had some game builds that I wanted to show today and I lost them. So instead we're going to look at YouTube videos. We're going to talk about different steps that I took to record our progress in other ways, and then we're going to kind of we're going to go from there to see how you can go about pitching your game. So this is the mouse. Yeah. First of all, what I want to say is if you want to, there we go. First of all, what I want to say is if you want to pitch and direct a game for your animation BFA, you need to learn how to use the engine. The game dev club is amazing, and you will meet so many incredible programmers and so many people who have all of these skills that can help you out. But without actually understanding what's going on under the hood in your game yourself, you are only going to get so far, and you're not really going to be able to fully grasp how your game works, and that is going to mean that you as the director are not going to be successful. So we started out, our game that we were pitching was a top-down isometric exploration game, kind of a walking simulator with this isometric environment. And I started out basically just as the art director and just as the game director, and not really understanding how the actual programming worked. And we got nowhere. We were floundering. We couldn't even get the movement to work until I actually got down under the hood in Unity and started programming myself to demonstrate what I wanted, because I didn't have the vocabulary to actually address the vision that I had in my head for what this game was supposed to be. So this was a YouTube video that I made really early on. When was this? This was 3 years ago. This was during the game jam the summer before I directed my BFA game. And what I was doing was I was basically recording my progress in Unity, if we can get it to load, for developing the actual input system that we used for the movement, which was the core of our game, because it was kind of this walking simulator exploration game. And that included code that I actually wrote myself. I learned C# in order to direct this game for my BFA, because that is often what it takes. So as a person that is working on this kind of project, you need to be a jack of all trades. So you can see actually me getting our little cube to move, if I can get to the part where it moves. This was documentation that I made to start trying to get started with actually making this game. Yeah, the YouTube player is kind of, yeah, there we go. But we have to move on. So next I want to talk about, once you kind of have a grasp on Unity, and once you're kind of practicing this, you're working alongside the game dev people in this summer jam trying to direct your project, and you've chosen your engine, and you've chosen kind of what you want your game to be. The next thing that you need to do is you need to get a really good grasp on what your engine can provide for you. So we needed a this is Echo from League of Legends. We had him in as a placeholder model. Don't pay attention to that. But anyway, we needed a character who actually was animatable, and Unity has this avatar system that, once again, I ended up kind of having to learn myself in order to, and those are placeholder animations, don't worry about that, in order to actually get our game to work. And this was another video of me demonstrating how I figured that out. And without tools like this, and Unity had so many of these other tools that we were trying to put together, and then of course, yeah, we're in Maya too. Unity had so many of these other tools that we were all trying to kind of put together and get working to kind of serve us and serve the game that we were trying to make. And the game would not have been possible to put together with that. And then this is a place where, once again, the Summer Game Jam and working with the Game Dev Club can help you, because these guys know more about these engines than we ever could, right? I did all that work to teach myself C# and teach myself Unity and prep myself to directing this game before we even pitched it, all during the Summer Jam. But still, I just had a fraction of the knowledge that I would have needed to make the whole game myself. And so we brought other programmers on from the Game Dev Club, and we started working with them on figuring out which of these tools we can pull into our project and really get it to start working where we wanted it to work to. So then, once you've got all of that together, once you've got all the tools and once you've got all the knowledge, then you can actually start figuring out how your game is going to work. And then this brings me to the next step, which is that the game jam, like all of this work that you're doing in this over the summer in the game club with the game club for pitching your project, I'm sorry, very little of it should be art. You cannot focus on all of that artistry that you are mostly going to be doing in BFA and also focus on the game itself. It's just too big, too much scope. So I have pulled up some artwork that I did the semester before when I was working on how to pitch this game. And all of this didn't change during the game jam. I worked with my co-director, Michael Eston, who was doing modeling at the same time I was doing art to try and demonstrate how we wanted this game to go. And we worked on all of that during the, that's not it. But yeah, this is some, we worked on all of that during the semester before, and then we got to the game jam and we just dropped it. Like, put a pause on that, put a pin in it. We're just going to focus on games now. So I'm going to show you the video that we put together in Unity with the build that we came up with the game club next. And you're going to see that very little of this art stuff is present in there. It's all gray boxing, which is super important to realize coming into this, is you're not going to come out with a finished product. It's not going to look amazing, but you are going to come out with this really good grasp on how you want this game to be made, which is way more important, because then the next coming year is when you're actually going to make it. So this next video is one of the, this next video is one of the videos that we use to actually pitch the game. And you can see we've put everything together. We've got this isometric movement. The camera's pulled too far forward, but we've also got a bunch of other stuff like an item system, an interaction system. We've got locks and doors and keys and dialogue. And like all of this could almost become a real game right now, albeit a very basic one. But you can see we're just testing things out. And then the actual pitch is you demonstrating, hey, I have a good grasp on Unity. I have a good grasp on how to make a video game. And this is what I want to make. And then you tell them about your story, you tell them about your world and and this is my save system that took freaking forever to figure out. Because we didn't use one of the pre-built save systems, which I'll get to later. But once you've got all that, then that's all you need to demonstrate. You don't want to throw in a whole bunch of there's an ad. You don't want to throw in a whole bunch of artistry, because also when you pitch it, it might change later, which is a bummer, because then you've made all of this art that then you have to throw away because it turns out that your thesis advisor says that it doesn't work, because it doesn't, because you made it before you really knew what you were doing. So those are my big 3 points. You got to learn the engine and how to make games yourself, work with the Game Dev Club, have them contribute information and knowledge for how you can better do that. Integrate all that knowledge together, and then don't worry about the art, just worry about gray boxing, and you'll come out with a finished build that will demonstrate your knowledge of how to make games, and then you actually do the project from there. And then what the result is you've got a better grasp on how to make art for the game, when you actually go into making the game. So then the final thing that I want to do is I want to pull up what has been going on since that game, which is that I've been able to work on art for other games, right? So this is some art that I did for an indie game that's coming out soon, or that is out. It's, the industry is in kind of a tough place right now, but the important thing is that once you have all of this knowledge on what games need, it makes making art for them even better. And then beyond that, once you've got all of that, how do I access the actual files? There we go. Beyond all that, once you've got the, that's not on the stream. Is it?
No.
It's not. We'll get to that. But once you've got all of this games knowledge, you can also start working on your own games. And then all of this information that you have all kind of feeds into each other, where when you understand how better to make games, then you're better at making art for games, and then you're better at making games that look good, and you're better at making games in general. And I have this example of a kind of a similar looking game that are we still on? Yeah. You can still hear me. They can still hear me. Yeah. I have an example of a kind of similar looking game that I used some of that knowledge working on BFA to do, and it's mostly just a hobbyist project, but it's still a good exercise in what we are ultimately here for, which is making art. We'll get to that in a moment. Don't worry about that. But yeah, if I try to think about anything else to say, make sure that you've got a good file structure. Our producer for our project was the most valuable member of our team by a wide margin. Do not think that because you're making a game and not a short film, you don't need a producer. You need a producer even more, and that producer should ideally also have a good grasp on the engine. And then make sure that however your game is working, you can ideally, just like we had in our ending pitch, make sure that can be turned into what could be considered a final game for your final BFA. Ideally, you have something like that at the end of this games jam, and ideally you can turn it into what is a final game at any time. Because what happened to us is halfway through our project, right around December, our actual programmer from the, hey, here we go. What happened to us is right around December, our actual programmer from the Game Dev Club, he got hired at Naughty Dog. And Naughty Dog has this fun clause in their contract that I think a lot of other game companies do, where you're not allowed to work on indie projects while you're working for them. Otherwise, they own your indie project. So we were very lucky in that we prepared so well for that we didn't need him anymore. We could say goodbye, thank you so much, and have what was basically a finished game. And then the little bit of work that it still did need, I was able to do that, like integrating sound. So anyway, here's a fun little project that I don't have access to a keyboard. No, that's okay. I'll sit over there. Here's a fun little project that I was working on. I hope they can still hear me. Yeah, here we go. There we go. And I don't have access to a mouse either. Last year, this is just kind of a hobby while I'm in between jobs, but basically I am able to, don't worry about him. I'm able to take all of that information that I had, and I'm able to work on new projects, new games that I just kind of enjoy making as hobbies. While we are, is one more great skill that you get from doing game dev for BFA is that you actually get to continue to work on games in a way that is fun and satisfying and scratches your itch for making art and video games all at once. And oh, my guy's dying. So gonna let them die. Boom. Okay. And then once again, this also makes you better at actually making art for games. I believe that's all. I believe those are all the talking points that I had prepared. Just to go over briefly one more time. Plan your game out well. Don't worry about art during the jam. You gotta learn Unity yourself. I'm sorry, it's a pain in the ass. Programming is hard, but it's worth it. And once you have your build all set up and ready, it will make it that much easier to just focus on art and focus on the story that you're trying to tell, which will then, yeah, it'll make your BFA game that much better. And then my last point is that you should be prepared for the fact that making games for this particular project environment, making a video game for your BFA project in the animation program is so hard. It's hard, but it's worth it. You're going to come up with the most bizarre technical challenges, but if you can power through those, it's really satisfying because then you've got a project that's unique, that is more unique than any other different type of project because it has this interactive angle that other projects just don't, and people can experience it in new and different ways. So I'm personally really glad that you're interested in making a game for your BFA project, and I hope it's successful. Yeah? Okay. Shout out questions and stuff. Do you have any questions?
So thinking specifically about like the game jam itself,
Okay. Yeah.
and like something that's like really bookended.
Right.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody who is maybe thinking about doing like maybe they have a year or two before they have to like make that decision? What could they get from a game jam that might help them make this?
I have the perfect answer for that because I did the game jam twice. Here, hang on. I'm gonna grab that real quick, and I'm gonna hope that. Oh wait, we're not sharing screens anymore.
Okay, we can go back.
Yeah, we can go back. Hey, you can see stuff behind me.
Sorry,
Yeah.
let me use some.
Okay.
Should be that one?
Yeah. Okay.
You can move the brand.
That's visible?
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually did the game jam twice. This was the game jam the years in between my third year and my fourth year. And we decided to do a fun little project to, yeah, everything good?
Just have to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, should be.
Hey, there we go. Okay, yeah, and we decided to do a fun little project together where we wanted to do this kind of like a cyberpunk looking 2D, 3D experimental project where we had a 2D character a 3D character in this 2D world, and we wanted to try and figure out how to properly integrate those. And that was not a very it looks cool. It's interesting looking, but it wasn't a very successful project because we didn't know what we were doing. And so James asked, "What is my advice for working on a game for Game Jam? If you're not sure you want to do a BFA game in the future, if you're a couple of years away, my advice is do as many games as you can." Because you will learn more and more from each one, and I can say for certain that if I had not worked on this, then the jam that I had next, where I am, where's that ad? Yeah, the jam that I did next, where what I came out with it was this demo. Oh, there's another ad. I love YouTube, you guys. New YouTube. I love how many ads they are adding. So we would not have been able to do anything like this, and we would not have been smart enough to realize that this was the way to go with this particular type of game if we hadn't worked on this one before. It's saying it's playing sound. I hope it's not playing sound in the actual Discord, because I think that the sound is kind of overbearing on this. But yeah, and then you can see like some of the art we did, some of the modeling and the texturing that we did for these projects. It was interesting, but that's definitely the answer to that question. Is if you are thinking about maybe doing a game in the future, but you're a couple of years away from BFA, definitely do a game right now, and then the next year and the next year. Do as many work in this kind of field as much as you possibly can, because it is such a different way of approaching art than we learn in the program, and you need to teach it to yourself before you start working on the project that is going to be your capstone. Yeah. What's up?
We have a question in the chat
Okay.
from Nate. So they're asking, with foresight and experience now, what do you think you can accomplish if you were in a similar situation again?
With foresight and experience. That's hard because I like to think that I had quite a bit of experience in foresight when we came into our project. But there's always more you can learn. I was showing that game that I was working on last year just as a fun little side thing while I'm in between freelance jobs. The game that I could do right now is, I think, basically very similar to the game that we wound up with, which, if I can head back to my own personal channel, because I don't think I actually showed it, but it looked a little bit like this, right? I think that this is a reasonably this is a reasonable expectation for what the game that you're making for BFA should look like. But I think that with foresight and experience from working on this before, if I was starting afresh, going into BFA making a new game, I think that I could have pushed it further with the actual gameplay. Michael and I, when we were pitching the game, we knew that we wanted to have a game with bare bones, dead simple gameplay, because we understood that games are really hard to make and good experiences are really hard to make, and we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to have to focus on making a really wonderful, really tight, playable, fun experience. We wanted to focus on telling a story in an interactive medium. And the best way we figured out how to do that in the most bare bones way possible is this kind of little exploration walking simulator maze thing where you pick up keys and unlock doors. It's not engaging gameplay. It does effectively get across our skills at making games and putting artwork in an engine, which was the goal. But yeah, with that experience, I would have pushed it further with gameplay. The early pitch for this game was to have it be basically the same, except it's also a stealth game where you have to sneak past guards. That didn't happen because it turns out stealth games are really hard to program, and really, really hard to design. So if I were to do that also, I would recruit a skilled and experienced game designer from the game dev club, because that person is going to know way more about how to do that than I would. Yeah, basically.
We have another question from Ali.
Okay.
It's a two-parter.
Two-parter.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, do you have any experience with pixel art assets for a game? And then also, do you think that there's a difficulty difference between pixel art versus 3D? And if so, which one would you recommend for a first-time game?
Pixel art versus 3D. Oh, man. Okay, so the first thing you need to know about pixel art, and this is mostly me talking about other acquaintances who have worked on games like this. I've done a little bit, but that game that I showed you that I was working on last year that was kind of a hobby, that's pixel art in that it was a 3D game put through a pixel filter. Which, by the way, really cool thing to do that not enough people are doing. I definitely recommend trying it out because it kind of gets the best of both worlds. As far as pure pixel art, it's harder than you think. However hard you think it is, it's harder. Not just the actual making the art and making the animations with the art, but designing the game itself. There's an awesome video by I think Game Maker's Toolkit where they talk about Celeste. And Celeste has all of these little intricate mechanics inside of what is otherwise a fairly conventional, straightforward pixel art platformer to make it feel better. Because if you just do colliders, move right and left, jump, and then turn that into a game and put pixel art on it, it's not going to feel good. You need an extra level of control, an extra layer of finesse and programming. So I think that, first of all, if you're just thinking about doing pixel art, especially like a 2D pixel art platformer, because it seems easy, it's not. Second of all, I think that if you are really focused on pixel art, that does not excuse the need for someone who really knows the engine really well, someone who really knows games really well. And then versus 3D, I don't want to tell you how to make your BFA game, but I highly encourage people to go 3D for a BFA game because our program is halfway geared towards 3D, right? If you think about the 4 different disciplines that you could specialize in BFA, half of them are 3D. And we've got a lot of people who are trained to do 3D in our BFA, and they would be wasted on a pixel art game. So it's tricky, but because also 3D has its own issues, right? The big one is you need a rigger, and rigging is so difficult. Our original plan was to rig in Blender because rigging is a lot easier in Blender, but then it turns out that our animators weren't comfortable animating in Blender, so our Blender rigger needed to learn rigging in Maya, and that was one of the many issues that we ran into. But I would highly encourage someone to go 3D. If you're interested in the pixel art aesthetic, try 3D pixel art. It's interesting. This isn't to say don't do pixel art. If you're really interested in it, it's really fun. You can get a lot of great artistry into it. But for BFA especially, I think that you're losing out on some artistic potential if you just do pure 2D pixel art. And then the one other thing that I would say is doing a pixel art game for a non-BFA, just a little game jam project, is a great idea because it still teaches you a lot about the engine. Yeah?
I was going to ask, when did you guys have like a prototype or like a playable game just to start like testing by for your BFA project?
So playtesting, we didn't do a whole lot of playtesting.
Okay.
We were able to get away with that because our game design was bare bones basic. So we knew that everyone knows WASD for move. We have a little tutorial where it's like E to interact, that kind of thing. But still, that's like super easy and people grabbed onto it really quickly. What our pipeline was we had a playable demo that we wanted people to playtest, like newbies, I've never seen this before, sit down on a computer and just play the game at ShimCon that year. So we brought it to ShimCon. I had a clipboard and I spent the whole time writing down notes for different people who playtest. We also brought snacks for people who playtested our game, just as a little thank you. And people playtested it. They had a couple of small suggestions like, oh, I don't like how fast the character moves. Oh, I don't like this particular key binding. Maybe you should pull the frame out a little more, that kind of thing. But we were able to get away with it because we had a really simple, basic game, gameplay-wise. And then we were able to tweak those things and go from there in the weeks following ShimCon. And then because ShimCon is in February, we only had a couple more months to polish it up. And then polishing was stuff like audio and UI and that kind of thing. If your game is more complex, if your game has more of a focus on gameplay, it might be like action, it might be a platformer or that kind of thing, then you want to playtest earlier than that. But I wouldn't be the right person to ask about that. I would say you probably want to be playtesting that kind of thing concurrent to your entire production timeline. So if you can come out of the game jam with a working prototype that is playtestable, even if it's still just gray boxed, then you might want to be playtesting through like August, September, October, onward into the completion of your game. Because once again, game design is really difficult, and people are going to have way more gripes with your game than you think they are, and how it plays, because game feel is such a hard thing to grasp. So you want to give yourself as much time as possible with that. Or pitch a game that's simpler gameplay-wise, which is honestly, that's my advice, especially if you want to focus on the art side. Yeah.
I had another question.
Okay.
I was wondering what your guys' production was kind of like handling the art versus like working on the game, because you talk a lot about like you put a pause on the art.
Yes.
So did you guys like do all of the game stuff first and then come back to the art? Like what was the timing like for that?
So, like I said, like I did some concept art the semester before BFA, and then total pause on that while we just focused on actually getting stuff working in the engine. And then we jump right back into art as soon as we get our game approved. So it's kind of like a flip-flop, like do some art, and then chunk of time where you're just in the engine, and then chunk of time where you're just in some more art. But then as you move further on, you're doing more engine and art and putting them together and doing integration. As far as our timeline, we had one integrated scene. Let's pull it up here. Let's see if we've got a shot of it. We've got one integrated scene, which was, no, I don't think so. It's just us talking with our big mouths. Which was the, here we go. Yeah. Because this is the full gameplay. Which was, hey, you see that guy?
Who is that guy? Where'd you get that picture?
So we had
When's
one.
my compensation coming?
I think we already compensated you.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I think Michael gave you a cookie or something. I don't remember.
More than I expected.
So which was this scene? By December. So our mid-project presentation was basically we got enough working in the engine, and we got enough working with the artwork that we are able to create one scene in the game. And that's this. Here it is. Look at how cool it looks. Blah, 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 blah. And so that was like the big moment where we were like, okay, we could do this. And then the rest of it is just kind of concurrent work, getting all the art put in the engine, getting all of the concepts turned into models, and integrating everything. And then the one other thing I'd say is integration takes way longer than you think it does, which is to say, like, your modeler did 50 models for this game, for the entire environment. Now guess what? You need to take each of them, stick them in the engine, make a prefab that has the correct textures on them, set to the correct settings so that they catch the lighting that you designed in the correct way. And then you need to do that 50 times, right? And then you need what we had a team of 5, right? It was myself, it was Michael, it was 2 underclassmen, it was 1 other concept artist, all working on different segments of our modular environment at the same time. So like all of these little and there's our dialogue, there's our final dialogue system. All of these corridors, all of these all of these offices, all of that. Someone needs to position and place each of these prefab assets, each of these decals, each of these props. And that takes forever. So really, a lot of it is you get all the art mostly done, you get all the gameplay mostly done, and then putting it together is like a whole semester. So each production is going to be different. It's going to be really hard to like figure out exactly when your stuff is supposed to be done. Just always budget more time than you think you need, and you should be all right. Yeah.
One thing that's changed with BFA is everything is pre-approved before summer starts.
Everything is pre-approved
No,
before.
not everything. All the games, all the BFA thesis projects.
Really?
Yeah. So there's a class that they take. So they get
So you do
pre-production class, and then they give their presentations, and then the ones that look like they have a potential of being successful
Yeah.
get greenlit, and then over the summer they have a chance to work on
So this is all BFA projects, and then so you.
BFA thesis project.
So if you want to direct a BFA thesis project, you take the pre-thesis class, right? Which I did. I definitely recommend it. And then you can pitch there, and your project gets approved there. That is so much better. Oh my goodness. The stress that those first couple of weeks bring, where you're like, I don't know if my project is gonna get approved. Not having to deal with that. You guys are so lucky.
Maybe.
Yeah.
The only difference is that now instead of it being a 2-semester project,
Yeah.
it's a 3-semester.
Now it's a
project.
3-semester project. Now it's 2 semesters in the summer.
But not really.
Right.
We're not expecting you to do a semester's worth of work that summer. But you're doing it anyway, right?
Right.
It just gives you a little more leeway.
Well, I would say, that sounds great, first of all. But then I would say that all of that stuff that I said about your timeline, about having all of the game, like, figured out, all of the gameplay figured out, all of that before the first semester of BFA starts, that still definitely tracks. That's that's, in my opinion, the best way to do it. Because you want to spend BFA focusing on art. Yeah. And you've got Summer Game Jam to game jam during the summer. So it's perfect. It's almost like it was made for this. Yeah.
Close, right?
Yeah.
Who would have thought? I just had a quick question. It's not really related to this specifically, but we were on day 2 of a 7-day game jam.
Okay.
Would you offer anybody any advice in there?
On day 2 of a 7-day game jam.
Yeah.
So what kind of game jam is it? You guys want a finished thing? Like is this
We want a prototype.
You want a prototype?
Yeah.
On day 2. So day 2, you guys would be like figuring out how you. What I'm thinking about, if I was gonna be in this kind of situation, I would be spending days like 1 through 3 probably figuring out all of the stuff that needs to happen and getting everything like set up in the engine so that you can go into like full production mode and like, okay, I want 3 levels. Get all our assets into the engine, get all of the like movement and gameplay figured out so that then we can go into production and then we're testing at the same time.
But only ever do one level.
But you only ever do 1 level. Yeah, of course you do.
I would say scope down.
Yeah, scope down, of course. Well, first of all, I think on day 2 of a 7-day game jam, the advice scope down is great. Yeah, because you can never do as much as you think you can. I would say you should be, this is just a guess, but you should be looking at asset packs. Find some pre-made assets that you want to use and start using them. Because you're not going to be able to do your own art, not in 7 days. not for a prototype.
Not all of it, at least.
Yeah, you can do like 1 or 2 pieces. That's it. But a good asset pack free from the Unity store, nothing beats that. Like, yeah. That's my advice. But really, I'm definitely more of a crawler when it comes to game development. I don't take well to sprints. I don't take well to like fast game jams where I'm trying to prototype really quickly. I like to get in the weeds and figure stuff out. So I wouldn't be the best person to ask about that. Yeah.
Well, just a quick moment for any last questions.
Yeah.
Ben is like, wait, we're allowed to use asset packs?
Yeah. I mean, it's either that or gray boxes.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with gray boxes.
All right. Well, thank you, and thank you, Tom, for coming, and we'll make this video available to anybody who's not able to make it here.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
This is really great.
And thank you to our tech team for figuring out. This all looked so complicated.
All-star tech team.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys, everyone, so much. All right.
All right. Well, hey. So day 2 of 7. Please let us know if you're having challenges, if you're like experiencing things with your team, or if like you find that you need like another artist or something like that. This is the time to dial in any of that. And also, there was a little bit of a miscommunication earlier. For the most part, I think that the art building is going to be more or less open. But please let me know if you want to plan to come in. We are recommending the library until then, but yeah. So what's that? Oh, and there is a poll for people who are interested in trying to figure out where they're going to be working as well. So, all right. With that, all right. See you, Tom. See you, Jack. See you, everybody.
Like ordering.